Every year, my friend Dr. Dean Bertram runs a film festival called Midwest WeirdFest, which takes place at the Mycon Downtown Cinema in the city of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. On its website, MidwestWeirdFest.com, Dr. Bertram summarizes the flavor of his festival thus, quote, "I dream of Midwest WeirdFest evoking the awe and chills of the sideshow alley of a dark carnival, a place filled with terrors, wonders, and forbidden surprises. A film festival that celebrates not only independent genre cinema, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, action, thriller, but one that welcomes all types of underground film. A broad, if shadow-filled tent for all cinematic creations weird and wonderful," unquote. I'll let Dean elaborate at the end of this video. Last month, Dean generously invited me to submit an animated short to this year's festival, which takes place from March 5th to March 7th, and so I decided to put something together on instances of clairvoyance in northern Canada, the subject of the first chapter of my book, Mysteries of Canada Volume 1. I'll publish that video on my YouTube channel after it premieres at the festival. Right now, Dean is running a crowdfunding campaign for Midwest WeirdFest 2021 on Indiegogo, which terminates in less than 30 hours. There are still quite a few perks left for purchase, including stickers and magnets, face masks, t-shirts, tote bags, and tickets to the festival itself. If you'd like to help support Dean's festival and acquire some of these perks, please check out the link in the description. In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the strange tales of Canadian extrasensory perception I've come across, which failed to make it into the animated short which I submitted to the film festival. I'm putting together this video fairly quickly, because I want to give the Midwest WeirdFest crowdfunding campaign a shout out while it's still running, and so I apologize if the quality is less than what you're used to on this channel. If these stories interest you, and you'd like me to put together a more polished video on them in the future, please let me know in the comments. Without further ado, here are some forgotten tales of ESP in Canada. Enjoy. In the summer of 1843, a tough Scottish Hudson's Bay Company explorer named Robert Campbell decided to lead an exploratory expedition down the Pelly River in southeastern Yukon, one of the many battles comprising his lifelong quest to outcompete Russian fur traders in the Pacific Northwest. Campbell described this voyage in his journal and included an interesting anecdote involving a fascinating and mysterious aspect of Dene Indian culture. In his entry for June 10, 1843, Campbell wrote, quote, "A short digression here may not be out of place, and may be of some interest. All Indians I have ever met believe that certain highly favored individuals can, by means of conjuring, look into the future and foretell events that are to happen. And strange to say, I have known several instances in which the predictions of the conjurer have come true, or very nearly so. In the case I am about to mention, it will be seen how singularly correct the divination was. Our Indians wanted to find out what luck was to attend us on our voyage of discovery, and unknown to me, got one of their number, named Gauche, one of my hunters for many years, and an adept in most things, who was a famous expert, and implicitly believed in by the others, to conjure for them the evening before we started. He did so, and told what was going to happen on the trip. He described our course, stated that at a certain time we would meet 2 Indians on the right bank of the river. Afterwards we would meet a family of Indians with whom we would smoke and eat. That we would kill plenty small but no large game, although we would see plenty on the mountain slopes along the river, and many minor events he foretold, ending up by saying that at the junction of 2 big rivers we would fall in with many Indians, and talk with them much. After that he could not see us going any further, but that there was no blood visible, meaning that the strangers did not quarrel with us. How close Gauche came to the reality will presently be shown. My attention was drawn to the conjuring which had taken place by hearing the remark constantly made, "That's what Gauche said," when anything occurred which appeared to the Indians to corroborate Gauche's predictions." Unquote. Campbell went on to chronicle the voyage, and sure enough, each of Gauche's predictions were fulfilled. When the sunburnt, mosquito-bitten officers of the Northwest Mounted Police, Canada's first Mounties, rode into Writing on Stone in the fall of 1874, they were disheartened, saddle-weary, and lost. The previous fall, they had first come together as a unit in Fort Dufferin, Manitoba. That summer, after months of training, they rode out west, bound for the notorious Fort Whoop-Up, determined to bring law and order to the Canadian Wild West. Unfortunately, some of the Métis guides they hired had a less than complete knowledge of the Western Territories' geography. By early fall, the Mounties found themselves straddling the Boundary Commission Trail on the Canadian-American border, with no idea where they were in relation to their destination. The force's assistant commissioner, James McLeod, and a handful of officers rode south to Fort Benton, Montana, in the hopes that they might find some directions. They found better. Two of the town's most prominent businessmen hosted the Mounties. During dinner, the Montanian merchants suggested that McLeod and company hire a short, bow-legged Scots Blackfoot frontiersman named Jerry Potts as their guide. Despite learning that the unimposing mustachioed plainsman was a man of few words who had an enormous appetite for whiskey, the commodity which they hoped to eliminate from the Canadian plains, the Mounties took their suggestion and hired Jerry Potts as their chief scout. They couldn't have been happier with their decision. Jerry Potts returned with McLeod to Riding on Stone, took up a position at the head of the column, and led the bedraggled Mounties northwest over prairies and coulees. Said Mountie Sam Steele of the quiet, mysterious guide, quote, "He never talked with others when he was at work. He would ride on ahead by himself, keeping his mind fixed on the mysterious business of finding the way. He was never able to give any clear explanation of his method. Some mysterious power, perhaps a heritage from his Indian ancestors, was at work," unquote. In no time, Potts led the mounted policemen to Fort Whoopup, on the banks of the Old Man River. Shortly thereafter, he led them upriver to the location at which they would build Fort McLeod, their first permanent headquarters. Jerry Potts remained in the Mounties' employ, performing the functions of scout and interpreter. Throughout his tenure, he had several opportunities to demonstrate his supernatural sense of direction. Perhaps the most dramatic of these took place in the winter of early 1875, when he led his respective Mountie charges through blinding blizzards on 2 separate occasions, during one of which he was rendered snowblind. Said Sam Steele of his scouting ability, quote, "He possessed an uncanny sense of locality and direction. Others could guide travelers through country they had visited before, but this man could take a party from place to place by the quickest route, through country altogether unknown to him, without compass and without sight of the stars," unquote. In 1954, Jean Godsell, the wife of a prominent Canadian fur trader and historian, wrote an article entitled The Moccasin Telegraph, in which she described a mysterious case of Indian clairvoyance which took place at Fort Churchill, in northern Manitoba, in the early 1900s. Ever since the construction of the enormous Prince of Wales fort in 1717, the Fort Churchill area, situated at the mouth of the Churchill River, had served as one of the Hudson's Bay Company's 2 great ports, which lay, as one disgruntled HBC employee put it, quote, "asleep by the frozen sea," unquote. The sprawling chain of HBC fur trading outposts, which extended from Hudson Bay west and north across the continent, relied on huge biannual shipments of goods from England, which were unloaded at the bayside forts and transported to their respective destinations by York boat and canoe. According to Jean Godsell, sometime in the early 1900s, one of these ships was long overdue, causing Fort Churchill's factor, a fur trader named Ashton Alston, considerable anxiety. Desperate to learn any news regarding the fate of the missing ship, Alston hired a visiting medicine man named Shonkelli, who was famed throughout the region for his gift of prophecy, to employ the arcane arts in which he was versed in the acquisition of such news. Accepting a pile of tobacco plugs as payment, the shaman retreated to his teepee, where he went into a trance. He returned at sundown and declared that the ship would arrive the following day. It was delayed, he maintained, because her crew had decided to rescue a party whose own ship had foundered in the ice-choked waters of Hudson Strait. After rescuing these men, the company men suffered a tragedy of their own. One of their members, a man who wore clothes like a woman, died and was buried at sea. The following day, the HBC ship indeed arrived at Fort Churchill, just as the old man had predicted. While heading through the Hudson Strait, the crew had spotted some men marooned on an ice floe. They rescued the unfortunates, but were themselves trapped by heavy pack ice in the process. When they finally managed to liberate themselves from their icy prison, one of their members fell overboard and drowned. This man was a black-robed priest, bound for the mission at Chesterfield Inlet, in what is now Nunavut. Shonkelli's prediction, it seemed, was fulfilled. The stories you have just heard are but a few of the many tales of extrasensory perception which pepper historical Canadian literature. If this subject interests you, please let me know and I may make another video on it in the future. I'm now going to turn things over to my friend Dr. Dean Bertram, the organizer of Midwest WeirdFest 2021. Thanks for watching.
Hello, I'm Dean Bertram. I'm the founder and festival director of Midwest WeirdFest, which takes place at Eau Claire, Wisconsin, March 5 to 7 this year. We're in our 5th year, and as you can probably tell, I'm not from here by my accent. I'm from Sydney, Australia, initially, and I used to run 2 festivals there, a Night of Horror International Film Festival and Fantastic Planet Sydney Sci-Fi and Fantasy Film Festival. And 5 years ago, I started Midwest WeirdFest after I moved to Wisconsin, and you can tell living in the North Woods probably had something to do with it. I started to hear stories about strange cryptids and weird things in the area, and I read Linda Godfrey's book Weird Wisconsin, and it was just loaded with lake monsters and dogmen and Bigfoot sightings. I mean, there was a Bigfoot sighting literally down the road from where I live. There's werewolf sightings in the town where I live. I mean, it's crazy. And Ed Gein used to live not very far from here, the serial killer who inspired Psycho and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So anyway, I was inspired to start this little festival, not just to screen horror films like I did in Sydney at a Night of Horror International Film Festival, and not just to screen other genre like I did at Fantastic Planet, Sydney Sci-Fi and Fantasy Film Festival, but I thought I could do all things weird, strange documentaries and movies about the paranormal and films which were underground or offbeat or odd in any way whatsoever. And even though we're still a small festival and growing, we seem to be doing something right because we're really appreciated by the filmmaking community. On Film Freeway, the world's largest film submission site, which has over 9,000 film festivals, we're consistently ranked by filmmakers in the top 100 festivals on the planet, which is an incredible feat for a little genre and underground film festival. I think the other thing that makes us so popular and successful is our fantastic cinema, the Micon Downtown Cinema in downtown Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And part of the reason that I'm doing this campaign and part of the reason I need your help is because I want to give 50% of the proceeds to the Micon. They, like a lot of small businesses this year, were hit hard by the COVID restrictions. They had to close their doors and the like. And I've never dealt with a cinema even approximating the Micon in their kindness and their desire to help an independent film festival and their passion for the arts. They really need our help, and I'd love to be able to give a little something back. Now, I know this year has been tough on everybody. I know it's been tough on Midwest WeirdFest, it's been tough on me personally, it's been tough on the Micon, it's probably been tough on you. So if you can't afford to send us any money or to get any of the perks, which are fantastic, I mean, I'd love you to check them out. There's t-shirts, there's these fantastic dog tag passes which are collectible but also work as your full season pass to the festival. There's face masks appropriate enough for the COVID crisis I've been talking about. There's all kinds of great stuff. So check out the perks anyway. But if you can't afford to help us in that way, maybe you can't even afford just a $5 thank you perk, which would be fantastic because every penny is going to help us going into this festival. Because this year, we're probably going into it with about a little bit under half of what we would normally have running towards March, which is making things difficult. We'll still pull it off, but I think it could be a better festival if we could get a little more money in the door just to pay for things or to help fill the gap for things like advertising, things like printing, things like accommodation. I mean, it all sounds pretty boring, but it's all vital to running a successful and fun and vibrant festival, which is what we try to do at Midwest WeirdFest. But if you can't afford to help us, I get it. I don't want you to send money that you can't afford, but maybe you could share this link on your Facebook page or on your Twitter or share it anywhere. Maybe you have some friends that you think would dig the festival and dig the festival's mission, in which case it would be awesome if you could forward them a link and say, hey, check this out. But whatever you do, if you could do something, it would be incredibly appreciated. And hopefully, if you already know me, hopefully we'll get to see each other again sometime soon because like everybody, I miss a lot of people this year, and if we've never met, hopefully we'll meet somewhere down the track. And in the meantime, I'd just like to say farewell from my new home in Wisconsin's North Woods, but most importantly, in the meantime, please, keep it weird.